All right. So one thing we're going to talk about today is a deload. So this is something that a lot of people do not utilize at all, hardly ever in most cases, and it could be silently, costing you progression. Every single month, if you look at, how it kind of can compile week after week, month after month, how that fatigue just kind of stacks up, within your training, and how that can affect your progression long term. So, if we're talking about what is an actual deload, so a deload is a planned reduction in training. This is typically 5 to 7 days to allow your body to fully recover and super compensate and get like fully replenished with glycogen, have all that fatigue washed off. Essentially, it's a break from the gym, right? Um, you know, Now the biggest thing to keep in mind here is this is intentional. This is not just you missing a week to just miss a week. Like this is in the actual plan, just as far as you getting 10,000 steps a day. This is in the actual plan if we do have a deload plan for you. So, um, you know, for most people, taking a by the definition deload is that you're still training but at a reduced effort. But if you're truly run down, you're training to failure, you're actually getting after it inside of the gym. Actually taking 5 to 7 days off completely from the gym is also a valid and effective deload as well. Because the end goal here is recovery, and the method is going to depend on how actually deep in that fatigued state that you actually are. Like for me, example, I took 5 days off last week. I did not enjoy it, but it's what I needed to do because all my lifts were going down. I was tired all the time. Soreness was like just compounding and compounding and compounding. And even after the 5 days of not lifting at all, I was still very, very sore. So, like, thank goodness that I actually did take, those 5 days off because if I just kept digging, myself into a deeper and deeper hole, it would have caught up with me in a worse way, essentially. And so, if we're still keeping it like what the basics are, what you want to do is a reduced volume, RPE, or both. Let's see. Let me get this fixed. Okay. And so typically, you're going to be training at 40 to 60% of your normal workload. So you're not just like randomly skipping like the gym, or you're not just like randomly, going in and lifting 10 pounds when you normally, lift 100. Like you're going to try to like be systematic about it, and just try to use this as like either an active recovery week, such as like you're still in the gym lifting just at a smaller capacity, or you're taking the entire a week off and just letting the body rest. So with all of this though, that super compensation is going to be the key concept. The body adapts and grows stronger after the training stress is removed, not during it. And we can break this down to as simple as we all know here that you do not grow in the actual gym. You grow outside of the gym with proper sleep, water, food, stress mitigation techniques, all the things combined. That's where that you actually grow and make your progress. And so if you're so worn down and so, in the dirt from all this fatigue that you have accumulated through training, you may need to take a deload, take a few days off, have that intensity reduced, 40 to 60%, and actually do that to better your progression. Um, and so a lot of people think though, well, if I'm skipping the gym, then I'm not really sticking on plan, or this just seems like a waste of time. Like I feel okay, by day two, day three, it's like, oh, I feel okay. I'm going to go ahead and just go back to the gym, right? Um, in today's society, like gym culture, the David Goggins, style mindset of like, no days off, no rest days, that kind of thing, that rewards grinding things out until you're just, down to your wits end, right? And pretty much punishing or talking down on anything that looks like resting or taking a break, right? And honestly, this is one of the most damaging mindsets that we have in fitness. Like the no days off, no sleep, that mentality is the dumbest mentality ever if you're trying to make actual progression, really in anything in life. A lot of people also think that you're going to lose progress. Like you're not going to lose any kind of significant muscle gain within 7 days. I mean, as long as you're eating your food as normal, you're still getting your steps, you're still getting your water. Your muscles are not going to atrophy and go away. You may lose a little bit of fullness from just glycogen storage, right? But the actual muscle tissue is not going to go anywhere. Now, granted, if you hop into this 7 day span and you don't go to the gym, you don't get any steps, you don't drink any of your water, and you go eat Mexican 6 times during the week, yeah, you're probably going to get fat. This is what it is. It's going to do you more harm than good. But for the people who do it right, it's actually a good thing. Now, another reason is why is these people do not recognize accumulated fatigue. Um, so, we're always in this mindset of, training. I'm gonna feel, I should feel like I'm tired. I should feel like I'm worn down. I should feel like I'm sore, right? But excuse me, kind of the thing to, think back on is that like that's your new normal, right? If you think back to the very first week that you started lifting, you were probably sore as heck that first week, right? But then after you did it for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, that is your new normal, and you didn't, recognize it anymore, right? Well, think about if you've been doing that for months and months and months and months on end, your body is screaming at you, but you just don't realize it because you've gotten used to it, right? It does not, your body just doesn't, recognize that accumulated fatigue anymore. Um, and so that's the thing that you just kind of need to think about from a very, systematic approach. You need to take deloads if you're actually serious about, getting the most out of your progression, phases. So if you're looking at yourself right now and you're wondering, do I actually need a deload? Like, what are the signs that I need one right now? So, a few things to look at is going to be obviously performance. If you've been in the gym, logging your weights as you should be, the weights feel heavier than they have the last 2 3 weeks in a row. Your reps are not increasing. The weight is going down. Motivation to actually go to the gym and hit the gym is down as well too. Probably a sign that you need a deload. If your recovery is bad, if you're sore for days and days and days and days, after a normal session, which then leads into this making your sleep bad or your sleep is just worse in general. Your resting heart rate is elevated, which is why I asked you guys to give me your resting heart rate. Or either you're always tired, even after a full 8 hours of sleep at night, could be another, sign that you need a deload. And then another one is just your body signaling to you that, hey, I need a deload now. This is something like persistent joint aches. Your mood is lower, your libido is lower, your food cravings are up. You're feeling flat, kind of stringy, even after eating carbs. So like again, it's more or less about, as a coach, like I can look at things like the performance side of things, or are your weights going up or down? Um, that's a pretty baseline thing that I can look at. Is one higher than, is one lower than three, right? Of course it is, and we can kind of make that justification there. As far as like a recovery, there's some things that I can see here. Other things are, I don't know if you're tired or not after sleep 8 hours. That's very subjective to what you say, and then your body signals for sure. Nothing that I can do is going to give me that info. That's essentially you. That's you, recognizing, do your joints hurt? Do your knees hurt? Are you, back hurt? All this good stuff, right? So again, it's more or less about like you can give me all the right things to go to, but on the flip side, you also need to pay very close attention to um, you know, if you actually need one or not. So if we're talking about how to actually do the deload, so obviously, I like to give you guys deloads if I think that you need one. Now, a lot of this is going to be on the caveat that you're training hard, that you're actually, pushing yourself in the gym. I mean, if you're walking out of the gym, you're not sweating a bit, you're not getting any kind of pump, you're just kind of, going through the motions. You hit rep 10 and you rack it, like you probably don't need a deload, right? You probably need to actually increase a lot of your things because you're essentially training at that 40 to 60% of what you could be, right? But if you actually do need a deload, there's several ways to do it, but the two main ways are going to be either reduce volume or reduce your intensity. So if we look at the volume deload, we're going to try to keep the same weight that you're using, keep all that stuff the same, and we're going to cut, the overall volume of those by 40 to 50%. Same exercises, total fewer reps. This is one to where like, if we're in like a phase that we're trying to see strength progress, this is one that just kind of keeps things firing, kind of keeps that strength curve up as well too. Now, if we're looking at the intensity deload, This is more or less kind of what I like to do. If I actually stay in the gym, preferably, I just like to not go into the gym. If I can't go train how I want to train, I just take the full days off. That's just me personally. But if you were to actually do the technical deload way, you would keep all of your volume the same and you would drop your intensity, your RPE, which is your rate of perceived exertion, down to a 5 or 6 out of 10. So for those of you that don't know, an RPE of 10 is your rate of perceived exertion. Like a 10 out of 10 is like you tried, there was a gun to the back of your head and you went as far as you could possibly go. That is a 10 out of 10. So if we're thinking of that a mindset, a 5 or 6, that's half of that essentially, right? Like you're just kind of, if you're doing 10 reps and you get to rep 6 and you feel a little slight burn, it's probably time to rack it if you're in this intensity deload, right? You're going to reduce the weight on the bar to match that RPE as well too. And this is one thing that I'm another big fan of as well too, is if you're using this technique to deload, um, this is a great opportunity to practice your form and your mind, muscle connection. Because if you're doing a barbell bench press, right? And you normally press 315 and your form's not that great and your, mind muscle connection isn't that great in this deload. If you're cutting, if you're pulling your RPE back way back, back to a 5 or 6, and you're going to reduce the weight to match that RPE, you could really get in some practice with 185, 225, right? And work on that mind muscle connection in your actual form. That way, then you go back into the gym the next week. Your form is better, or your muscle connection is better. The week was not wasted, I guess, in an essence. Um, and so, one thing I think I need to note here as well too is weight is just a unit of measure. So people I like to say, like, if you're doing a deload, either do a volume deload or a weight deload. I think instead it should be intensity deload, because weight is a unit of measurement, and these two can both kind of be in the same bucket as far as like volume and intensity. Weight has to be in the equation here, so that's why I like doing volume or an intensity deload. And so when do we program it? So and like I said, I think this is going to be different for everybody. Um, but for like a very generalized, basic, bare bone by the definition deload, every 8 to 10 weeks of heavy lifting is when you should take a planned deload. This is if you're training to failure. You're really, pushing your limits. You're not taking, a week of hitting failure, and the next week you're in la la land on your phone the whole workout and your workout sucks, right? And then, the next week you're back to it kind of thing. Like this is 8 to 10 weeks of actually, getting after it. Now, if you're in a calorie, deficit, which, with being in a calorie deficit, your recoverability is going to be lower. This is going to lower that amount of time down to that 6 to 8 week mark, if your fatigue levels see fit that you need to do so. And then again, this is important. Listen to your body. These numbers are not a set in stone guide. This is just, kind of just something to kind of keep you in between the lines, right? I mean, if you're at, week 10 of your, heavy lifting, block and you feel fine, don't take one. You might could push it another 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever the case may be. But you always just have to keep an eye on your fatigue levels. And if it starts to creep up, um, just be, I don't want to say mature enough to recognize it, but just know that for the sake of progression, you have to be able to identify that, and then take the deload week. A great time to do it is before a vacation or a travel week. So like if you're going to the beach next week and you're one of those people who don't want to work out, while you're at the on vacation, that would be a perfect time to do it. Take the full 7 days off. Just make sure that you get your food in, your steps in. Don't be a couch potato all week. Or if you're an individual like me who likes going to try out, different gyms and things like that, and it's getting close, to that point where that you need a deload, take it the week before. That way that, that you're fresh, going into the vacation, you don't have aches and pains, and you can actually enjoy your time at the new gym facility, that you're at for the week, and not have to worry about your knees hurting or your elbows hurting or things like that. And I think the biggest one that I like to do is after a change of a phase. So if you're going from a maintenance phase to a transitional phase to a fat loss phase, and it actually is warranted, that's when it could be used there. I think it's just um, again, sticking to these set numbers can limit you in a way. Like it can obviously keep you out of trouble as well too. But I think the biggest one here, when to actually program it, um, is to just do it after a major phase. If you've been dieting hard for weeks and weeks and weeks on end, after that's over, take a deload. If you've been bulking for months on end, after that phase is over, take a deload. It just needs to be something that is planned to a degree, and just not forgotten about for months and months and months, and maybe even a year or two on end. So, the bottom line with all of this stuff, though, is you guys know, I'll say it again and again. You make your progress outside of the gym, not inside of the gym. And you will not be able to outtrain any kind of chronic accumulated fatigue. A deload is not you just wasting time or it's just a wasted week. It is actually just a part of the plan. Again, just like you getting your steps as a part of the plan, you taking the deload, if it is a part of your plan, is going to be sticking to the plan. So, with that,